Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. And I hope you've been doing well since the last time I've seen and talked to you guys, but I thought in today's video we could do a nice just January recap of all of the books that I've read in the month of January this year. I read 6 books in total, which that is a lot for me because I do have a full-time job, so 6 books is a lot. I feel like I normally average like 4 to 5. But January I was just reading through so many books and I had a fabulous reading month, which hopefully the rest of the year goes this way. I really enjoyed every single book that I read. I think every book that I gave was either a 4-star and above, so really amazing reading month, and I can't wait to share all of the books that I read. But I wanted to plug my Instagram and Goodreads. If you want to stay up to date in real time of what I'm reading, definitely make sure to follow me on Instagram. I'm always posting on there all my initial thoughts of books that I'm reading or what I'm about to read. And similarly on Goodreads, I do type up some mini reviews on there as well. So let's dive in and start recapping all the books that I read this month. So the first book that I decided to pick up was Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. I feel like I gave a mini review in one of my past reading blogs, but I picked this book up, one, because of how short it was, and I was really on the fence of what I wanted to read because I had just finished reading Iron Flame and doing my deep dives of the Empyrean theory and preparation for Onyx Storm. So I knew I didn't want to start a big fantasy series off the bat this month, and so this one had been sitting on my TBR for a hot minute, and I feel like a lot of people that I've seen talk about this book really enjoyed it, and so I decided to pick it up, give it a chance. And a big reason why is for the length. It is a shorter book and I flew through this. This was the perfect book to kick off my reading year. This is a very whimsical fairy tale world. In the review that I gave in one of my past videos, I said it was similar to a Bridgerton meets Ella Enchanted type of aesthetic and vibe, and I really stand true to that. This book was so whimsical. The banter between all of our characters was witty and fun, and there was like magical realism elements, but it wasn't leaning too heavily and like a shadow wielder or anything like that. So we follow our main character who at a young age gets half of her soul taken away by a fae, and she's now living essentially her life with half of a soul. So she has the half that is very emotionless, I guess. Like, she isn't easily scared, she isn't really aware of societal norms, she just says whatever's on her mind. She is very odd basically in society, and so she's grown up this way, and she has a cousin that she's been living with because of course her parents died or whatever. Of course, it's giving Disney movie, you know, where the parents die and it's like, oh no, the tragedy. So she's growing up with her cousin, and her cousin it's time of the season to get married, and so they travel to London to help find better suitors for her cousin, and so her main character tags along, and of course naturally she falls in love with the town magician, which in this world that's a very high ranking title in this court because he can wield magic. There's this evil sickness going around the children, and he's trying to investigate how it's happening, and it's a magical illness, and he's so unsure of what's going on. And so we kind of see this like mystery unfold as our main characters try not to fall in love with each other. They pretend to date to try and like keep the suspecting mamas off of their backs, and of course naturally they do fall in love with each other. And this book was fun. It was whimsical, lighthearted, the banter, there's ballroom scenes, so if you loved in Bridgerton like the tension of a ballroom scene or like the family dynamics, then I would recommend picking this book up. And it's on the shorter side. There were some really cute moments in here where I highlighted because I was just like giggling, kicking my feet, and for how short it was, I was really immersed in this. The writing was beautiful. I believe there's other books in this universe now. I don't think I'm gonna pick them up if I'm being honest. The epilogue in this wraps up everything very nicely to the point where I don't feel the need to dive deeper into this world. Very content, and I gave this I think a 4.25 rating, so great way to start off the year. Then the next 2 books that I read was the Shepherd's King duology. I finally read this, you guys, and I can't believe I've gone this long without reading them. So we'll first talk about One Dark Window. We follow our main character Elsbeth, who lives in this very dark, earthy town where there's a blight going around. So basically nature is calling unsuspecting victims into the woods and they mysteriously disappear into the fog, and basically you have to have a charm on you to help evade this mysterious voice that enters your head. And so there's that aspect to this world, but then also there's this magical deck of cards that if you unite the whole deck, it will lift the fog and the blight. So that's what the king is determined to do, to unite the deck. It's very hard because one of the cards has never been seen ever, and so everyone's like, we're never gonna unite the deck. But our girl Elspeth touched one of the cards at a young age, and at that time, essentially another voice entered her head and it freaked her out. And she was basically blessed with a gift. If you are blessed with a gift in this world, a magical gift, then you do experience degeneration. So each person is affected differently. Your veins turn inky black and either you deteriorate faster than others. And so one of the king's nephews is actually gifted as well. And so he's really pushing to unite the deck to help save his cousin. And we just get to experience this unlikely pairing between the king's like enforcer, who is supposed to kill people who are gifted, and Elspeth, because she can see the color of cards in her vision, which is a benefit of the gift that she has been given. King's guard realizes he needs to partner with her in order to find the remaining cards and unite the deck. And so thus begins the journey of trying to find some remaining cards. They have to like steal it off of this one higher aristocrat in society, and we get to see a lot of intense fighting. The banter between our main characters is also pretty great. I will say the love story in this is very much, I think, a subplot. We really focus on this world and the magic system, which I think is incredibly unique. I haven't read a fantasy like this in a while where it's so unique. The magic system, or just the magical deck of cards, was very fun. And we do have a found family aspect of this, because within the royal family there's a smaller group that's trying to actually unite the deck for the greater good without any nefarious business. Because the king, while yes, he does want to unite the deck, he also wants to be the most powerful of the land. And so it's very interesting. We learn a lot about Elspeth and this thing that's living inside of her head, and like being gifted her the ability to see these magical cards and like gift her strength. And we do eventually learn about her degeneration and the impacts of it. And this book was fabulous. It was following mostly Elspeth's point of view in this book, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I gave this one also a 4.25 rating, which leads me to Two Twisted Crowns, the second book. And oh my gosh, I can see why people love this book so much more than book one. Not that book one was bad by any means. It's still the same beautiful writing in this one and the same fantastic world building. However, we get multiple POVs in this, okay? Didn't expect that when I first went in, and I will say we get the POV from Elm, which he is the prince. He's like the second youngest son, and the eldest gets severely beaten to death almost in book one, so he's kind of incapacitated for a moment. So this Prince Elm is suspected to take the throne, and it really shifts the dynamics in the kingdom, and it's so fun reading this book. We're also introduced into Elspeth's cousin, who is gifted the maiden card in book one. We get a lot more of her in this book, and I will say she gets a redemption arc, because thank God, she was so annoying in book one, and I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to like this character. But we do get a redemption arc in book two, and that's also through the help of Prince Elm kind of cracking away at the cousin and realizing that she needs to be released from the maiden card. But again, in this book, we also find out a lot more lore of how the magical cards came to be, their purpose truly, and we also find out who the Shepherd King really is, because at this point in time, going into book two, we know of the legends and kind of like the stories by word of mouth, but no one knows for sure truly what happened, how these cards came to be, who is the Shepherd King. And turns out that is who is living in Elspeth's head, and we just find a lot more out about how the deck of cards came to be, how it was during the Shepherd King's time, and how he lost his throne and was murdered, and how they kind of take back the deck and solve the problems in this world. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I gave this one a 4.5 rating. Truly magnificent. The writing just as beautiful in the first one and this one as well. And if you have been on the fence of reading the Shepherd King duology, please pick it up. It is fantastic. I feel like this time of year is also the perfect time to read this. These books are very atmospheric and moody, and I think it fits perfectly for the winter season. So definitely move this up on that TBR if you've been on the fence about reading them, but highly, 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 highly recommend. And now I'm excited to read more books from Rachel Gelleg because her writing was phenomenal and I just love how unique this world was. So highly recommend. At this point in time, it was almost time for the Onyx Storm release. So I was really struggling with, I don't know what book to read next. I don't want to dive into something that is like new and I'd have to get invested and it might take away from Onyx Storm. And so I naturally decided it was time to do a reread of a book, and I decided to reread A Court of Thorns and Roses. I read this for the first time 2 years ago, and last year I actually wanted to reread it, but I was like, I'm gonna wait just a little bit longer to reread it, and I'm happy I picked it up. This was the perfect book to hold me over until Onyx Storm, and I feel like most of you guys know what ACOTAR is. We follow Feyre and her journey of entering into the spring court, meeting Tamlin, and then also eventually meeting Rhysand, and all of the journeys and the struggles of her battling under the mountain with Amarantha. And I just really enjoyed this book. It was a nice palate cleanser to go back to something I was familiar with, but then this time I decided to tab and do some more annotations in this book, and I forget how much you love Tamlin in this book. He doesn't seem awful in this book compared to the next book, and just like the pivot that we do against Tamlin is so crazy. I also love Lucian, and I really hope we get either a redemption arc or more of his story in the next ACOTAR book, which I know it's like TBD on when we will get that, but I know Sarah J Maas is writing it, so hopefully the next story will revolve around him, because I just adored him in this book. He was so witty, so fun with Feyre, and you can tell their friendship really started to bloom in this one, and this was just honestly the nice palate cleanser to read. And I think I'm gonna slowly reread the rest of this series throughout this year, just because why not? It's fun, and it's always nice to go back to this world. I forgot how much I truly enjoyed this series, especially the first time I read it. You're just so like in it, but now that I can take a step back, I just, wow, what a comfort read, and I truly thoroughly enjoyed it. So this was the perfect book to hold me over until it was time to read Onyx Storm. Oh, and I obviously gave this one like a 4.5 rating. I still stand by that. Even when I first read this, I knew it wasn't a 5-star, and I knew other books in the series I would love more, and so I still stand by like my 4.5 rating. Like, I really enjoyed it. There are still moments where I was like, it's fine. It's nothing like spectacular, mind-blowing, but I think it's a very strong first book in a series. So for that, I really appreciated it. Anyways, diving into Onyx Storm, I did a full reading vlog on this, but I can just quickly summarize my thoughts on this. This book was fun. The banter was amazing. The pacing I thought was really great in this one, especially when we compare it to Iron Flame. Iron Flame was a drag a little bit, and even on a reread, I still think there was pacing issues in it. However, I could appreciate the story more so in the reread of Iron Flame versus the first time I read it. This book, however, I enjoyed it the first time I read it. It's giving similar energy to Fourth Wing, how much I enjoyed it the first time, and just the amount of theories that have come out of this book and like sent us all spiraling is very entertaining to watch all those theory videos and see what people come up with. And I always just have to remind myself that this is basically the middle book in the series. We still have 2 more books to get out of this series, so yes, we are left probably with more questions and answers than what we had hoped for. However, I do think it's setting up for an interesting premise in book 4. We get to explore a lot more of the kingdom and the world in general in this book, and I really hope in the next book we get an updated map, because in an interview with Rebecca Yarros that she did, I think with the Fantasy Fangirls, she confirmed that the reason why they didn't include some of the new islands that we explore in this book is because they thought it was too spoilery, which I feel like you could have made maybe the back of the map one, you know, not as spoilery, but I also felt like we all knew we were going to explore the Isles Kingdoms at some point, so I guess I understand, but I'm also like, come on, please. So hopefully in the next book we will get an updated map, but I absolutely just adored this. I thought Violet and Xaden's relationship really improved, especially when you compare to how they were in Iron Flame. You get to see the growth and the payoff in this book, and their communication was so much better with each other. And then we also got so much Riddick content. My God, I love this character and he's one of my new favorites. And all I have to say is we must protect him at all costs. Like, Rebecca better not even think about killing him off in the next book, or else I will be devastated. Overall, this book was a really fun time, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I honestly can't believe that one of my most anticipated reads has already come out, and I've read it, and now I don't know what to do with myself. I'm a little lost, a little like, I don't know what to do with myself right now, but I've basically just been consuming so many theory videos of people theorizing like what could happen in the next book, how it's going to go about. Honestly, there's a big cliffhanger of who is the brother that turned at the end with Xaden, and I have my theories. I just love seeing what other people think. So if you ever want to talk about Onyx Storm, you just finish it, slide into my DMs on Instagram, because I have been chatting away with basically anyone and everyone who wants to talk about this book. So definitely hit me up over there if you want to talk about it. Also, I just love this edition of the book. Ooh. I just think it's absolutely gorgeous. I love the sprayed edges, and I'm so happy that I was able to snag my copy of this edition of Onyx Storm. I am curious to see what the next book will look like. I'm envisioning a fully silver cover, because I feel like if you look at the other covers, they kind of are transitioning and we're starting to get silver here. So anyways, I'm just curious on what's going to happen in the next book. Like, I have so many thoughts, and who knows when we're going to get it, because Rebecca hasn't even started writing it, which she needs a break. Like, fully support her getting a break, but oh, the wait is going to be painful. So I'll probably be doing a few more rereads of this series in the meantime. And then the last book that I read was actually an audiobook. I listened to Little Women, and particularly the one that Laura Dern narrates with an ensemble cast, and I loved this book. A few of us on Instagram did like a buddy read of this, and I'm so happy we did. It really encouraged me to pick up this book finally. It's literally been a book I've been wanting to read for like decades now. I feel like at this point I've wanted to read it for so long. And I'm happy I finally did, and I'm happy I did the audiobook version because it was just so enjoyable. I loved it. I loved the ensemble cast narrating. It really, I think, brought the story to life. And Laura Dern, I mean, obviously she's fantastic. Like, can't go wrong with her. But if you are interested in reading this book, I highly recommend picking up that audiobook because it made it that much more of an experience. But I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4.5 stars as well. It's also amazing that this book was written so long ago, but a lot of these themes still hold up and carry true to this day. Obviously the whole like marrying for money, that thing has like not as impactful, but the dialogue on family relationships and finding fulfillment basically is still a big, I feel like, talking point to this day. So I thoroughly enjoyed this book, and I'm so happy I read it. It was also one of my goals for this year to read at least 2 classics. So I'm halfway there, and I love that I finally did it. The next classic that I think I want to read is Frankenstein, but I want to save that for Halloween. So if there's any other classical books that you guys have enjoyed, let me know in the comments below. I have read some, like I read some in high school, but I want to read them again, or just make sure I'm like expanding my palette when it comes to reading, you know? As much as I love my fantasy books, I'm clearly in my fantasy era, I want to make sure I'm diversifying my reads and just like not staying in my own little bubble. So if you have any recommendations, let me know down below. But those are the 6 books that I've read in the month of January. Like I said, January was a fantastic reading month for me, and I'm really hoping that that is the way for this year, because last year was kind of a flop. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't have as many 5 stars as I thought I would, and most books were just okay. So I'm feeling like we're on the right track right now to having some really fun books for my recap at the end of this year. If you guys have read any of these books, let me know your thoughts on them down below, or you can share what books you read in the month of January. I'm always curious to see what books we're all picking up and if you enjoyed them or not. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe as always so you don't miss out on my next video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.